Join me later today on Jaguar Gator 7, where a new episode of Dumb Decisions will drop about something involving the Red Sox. Click the card in the upper right corner to join the channel. And now, on with our feature presentation. This player right here is Samori Toure, a receiver who plays for the Green Bay Packers, who went to Montana and Nebraska. Odds are, unless you're a Packers fan, or a fan of one of those two aforementioned schools, you have absolutely no idea who he is. And that's okay, because he didn't exactly do a whole lot last season with the Packers. During the 2022 season, he had 5 catches for 82 yards. That's it. Green Bay's receiving unit was already thin as it was, and Toure couldn't do anything noteworthy. He was inactive for 6 games, had just 1 catch over the final 8 games of the season, and only had 1 game, which came in a 15-9 loss to the Detroit Lions, where he had more than 1 catch. Toure was chosen in the 7th round of the NFL Draft with pick number 258, so it's not like the Packers are kicking themselves for Toure not doing a whole lot his first season, because if you can find any contributor at that stage, you did really well. But a guy like Isaiah Pacheco or Brock Purdy, he was not, and Toure will have an uphill climb to make it onto Green Bay's roster in 2023. However, I bring this up because now, I want you to imagine that a team called up the Packers during the draft and said, you know what? I really like Toure. I think he's got a ton of potential. I'm willing to trade for him. And they offer a high 3rd round pick to do so in the 60s. If I'm the Packers, you can bet your bottom dollar that I'm jumping all over that deal and not thinking twice about it. You're telling me I can move my 7th round pick, who is ineffective, for a 3rd round pick and jump up roughly 200 spots to do so? Of course I'm taking that trade. Why wouldn't I? I'm getting rid of a 7th round pick who had under 100 receiving yards and had 5 catches, and getting a premium pick in the process. What's not to love? Well, I bring this up because of the 1978 NFL Draft, a very similar situation happened involving this man right here. This is Larry Mucker, and entering the draft, he was a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a late-round wide receiver who didn't do much of anything as a rookie. And the Green Bay Packers, for some reason, were so enthralled by him and how good he could be that they offered an absurdly high draft pick to trade for him. And for some reason that I cannot wrap my head around no matter how hard I try, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers declined the trade and declined the absolute gift that they were given. Because this is the story behind the strangest failed draft trade in the nearly half-century-long history of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers franchise. Before I talk about the actual drama in question regarding the failed trade and why the Packers were even interested in the first place, we need some context to understand just who Larry Mucker was and how he played as a rookie. The year was 1977, and in the 9th round, with pick number 251, the Buccaneers decided to take a flyer on an absolutely dominant receiver from Arizona State by the name of Larry Mucker. Mucker was one of the best receivers in the WAC, where the Sun Devils played their football. During the 1975 season, he was 3rd in the conference in both receptions and receiving yards, ending the year with 45 receptions for 796 yards. And in 1976, he followed that up with 835 receiving yards, which was not only 2nd in the WAC, only behind Keith Hartwig of Arizona, but was 6th in the entire NCAA. During that 1975 season, ASU was a dominant team, going 12-0 and finishing 2nd in the AP poll thanks to a Fiesta Bowl victory over Nebraska, and the contributions of Mucker on offense were a big reason why. Now, he was in Tampa, with the goal of bolstering an offense that was dead last in points scored the previous year, averaging just 8.9 points per game, and helping out a team that had yet to win a game, being absolutely futile. As for how Mucker's rookie season went, well, it wasn't good. Mucker said before the start of the season on his mentality, you make a mistake here, and it can be all over. You do things over and over on the field and in your mind, in your dreams at night. Make a mistake on the field one day, and you might not be back the next. And man, did Mucker make a lot of mistakes. The good news was that the Bucs were so bad that they couldn't exactly afford to cut him. But the bad news was that he was really struggling. He got chewed out by quarterbacks and receivers coach Bill Nelson, who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, for dropping an easy pass in camp. Another time, he ran the complete wrong route, as he was supposed to run a 17-yard out route, and instead ran a fly route deep down the field. That's a pretty big miscommunication. He struggled so much during camp that he was exhausted and had trouble sleeping because of it. His body was just not cooperating with the Tampa heat and humidity. And those struggles continued into the season, at least when it came to his ability as a wide receiver. He was a fairly decent gunner on special teams, but the impact in the receiving game was not there whatsoever, as he ended the season with 4 catches for 59 yards, despite playing in every game. That's it. Just to give you an idea of what the Bucs were working with when it came to Mucker's stats, his 4 receptions ranked tied for 233rd in the NFL, and his 59 receiving yards ranked tied with teammate Danny Reese for 217th, and Reese primarily played defensive back. Mucker had 3 catches for 42 yards against Washington in Week 4, 2 of which came in garbage time, had 1 catch for 17 yards against Green Bay in Week 6, and that was it, as he was held without a catch in 12 out of 14 games. And keep in mind that this was on an atrocious offense, as in an offense that was somehow even worse than they were in 1976, as they averaged 7.4 points per game, got shut out 6 times, and took until Week 14, as in the last week of the season, to score a touchdown at home. Outside of Morris Owens, no one on the Bucs had 200 receiving yards or more than 15 catches. It was that bad. If you were just looking at the box score and the eye test, you wouldn't have thought much of the 9th round pick. But for some reason, despite the unproductive season, there was one team that thought very highly of him, and that was the Green Bay Packers. Maybe it was that 1 catch that Mucker had against them, but the Packers were a team that desperately needed some offensive help. I said how the Buccaneers were the worst offense in the NFL in 1977. Well, the Packers were the second worst, and I talked about how inept they were in a previous video of mine, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. The Packers averaged just 9.6 points per game in 1977, and only 3 times in 14 games did they score more than 10 points. Much like the Bucs, the Packers were completely lacking at wide receiver. Not only did the team score just 6 receiving touchdowns, which was the 3rd worst total in the league, but outside of Steve Odom, not a single player on the Packers had more than 1 receiving touchdown. Not one. None of Green Bay's receivers started all 14 games, and your starting receivers on a week-to-week basis were the likes of Steve Odom and Ollie Smith, who wouldn't even play again after the 1977 season. Yeah, that's not striking any fear into the heart of any opposition. Hang in there, Packer fans. In just a few short years, you'll have one of the greatest wide receiver corps in NFL history with a 1-2 punch of James Lofton and John Jefferson. But for now, this is what you got. A complete and utter mess. And the Packers, needing wide receiver help, decided to go to the Buccaneers of all places during the draft. Because after drafting James Lofton with their 1st round pick, they called up Tampa and inquired about none other than Larry Mucker. Because that makes complete sense. Call up the only team that was worse than you for help at that position to try and get a guy who couldn't even do anything on that team. It's like if I want to cast someone in a musical without having an audition process. So I watch a local production of Hairspray, and everything about this particular production of the show is terrible. The actors are flubbing their lines, the choreography is off, and no one can hit a note. And then I go up afterwards and ask if I could speak to and buy the contract off the understudy, Which makes total sense, because if they couldn't crack into the main cast of that mess of a show, despite how bad the cast was, they'd be a perfect fit for a lead role in a brand new show. I can hear the bells alright, except these are the bells sounding the crazy alarm. But not only did the Packers call the Buccaneers to ask about Larry Mucker, they were so impressed by the guy with 4 catches that couldn't crack into the worst offense in football and was a 9th round pick that they offered the Buccaneers and John McKay a 3rd round pick, which was pick number 62. Seriously, the Buccaneers can get the 62nd pick in the draft, which today is a 2nd round pick. And in return, they had to give up a 9th round pick who struggled, who did nothing on offense, and had 4 catches for 59 yards and no touchdowns. Imagine if a GM said, I'll give you a pick number 251 this year for pick number 62 next year. For whatever reason, that's what the Packers wanted. And I don't know what's crazier, the fact that the Packers even offered that absurd trade in the first place, or the fact that for some reason, the Buccaneers declined it. Seriously, here they had an opportunity to move up 190 spots from one draft class to another, and give up nothing of value to do so, and they shot it down. The Bucs never clarified why they shot it down, and the Packers never clarified why they made the trade offer in the first place. All we have is this short blurb that said that McKay confirmed the trade offer and that the Bucs declined to make the deal. That's it. And if the Bucs didn't want to make the trade because they were worried that they wouldn't be able to replace Mucker for some reason in his production at wide receiver, well, not only were there very good receivers that got drafted shortly after pick number 62, like Jimmy Cephalo and Mike Renfro, who went on to have very good careers in the NFL, but that didn't stop the Bucs from drafting 2 receivers later in the class in Elijah Marshall out of NC State and Willie Taylor out of Pitt, both of whom combined to have 0 career catches in the NFL. Make it make sense. Which raises the question, did the Bucs make the right call in keeping Mucker and turning down this trade to get a 3rd round pick out of him? Well, not really. On one hand, I can't deny the fact that he made an impact in 1979 when he had 5 touchdowns, which was the 2nd most receiving touchdowns on the team. Heck, just about all of the highlights that you've been watching of Mucker that whole time came from that 1979 season, when the Bucs shocked the world by winning the NFC Central and making it to the NFC Championship. I even talked about Mucker in a previous video of mine, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. On the other hand, that 1979 season was the only season that he scored any touchdowns. He was out of the NFL by the middle of the 1980 season, and his final stat line was 33 receptions for 635 yards and 5 touchdowns, never having more than 14 catches in a single season. If you don't trust your scouting department with pick number 62 to get better production out of a wide receiver than that, then you need to fire your scouting department. Again, for a 9th round pick, those numbers are perfectly fine. I'd even go as far as calling Mucker a very good pick, seeing as he did something, and that's all you can ask out of a 9th round guy. But for a super early 3rd round pick, that by today's standards would be a 2nd round pick, yeah, it's hard to say at the time, and with the benefit of hindsight, that they shouldn't have pounced on Green Bay's offer. The Buccaneers made a ton of questionable draft decisions back in the day. There's a reason that they're the worst franchise in NFL history from a winning percentage standpoint. And while this one has been somewhat forgotten, it deserves to be remembered for just how absurd it was. Because when it came to the failed trade of Larry Mucker, a lot of Bucs fans were left scratching their heads and wondering, what the muck? Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.